right, my house is twice this size. So once that house closes, all right, I have comparables. 'Cause I'm tracking. Yeah, exactly. I'm an investor. I'm tracking. Once that closes, all right, there's no way that my home is not at least worth 575.
This month we had a hard money lender come in and talk about different ways of funding, and so we're sticking with the second F in our formula, which stands for funding. And so my guest today is Jeffrey Nelson. He will tell you what company's from. He just recently switched over, but I call him Jeff Moneyman Nelson. And Jeff will be talking to us about the importance of funding and some of the things that's going on in the market nowadays, because as he and I were talking offline, there's a lot of things happening, a lot of things shifting. And so what we want to do is keep you abreast of those things. So Jeff's going to talk about that, but then also he's going to talk about, because this show is being shot in Massachusetts, but Jeff lives in Rhode Island, specifically Woonsocket. And so part of what I wanted Jeff to talk about tonight was what's going on in the Rhode Island market, because as I told you guys some time ago, you got to look everywhere nowadays because inventory is tight. And so in Massachusetts, and so person we're looking in Connecticut, person we're looking in Rhode Island, person we're looking in Puerto Rico, we're looking at any place there's a house, that's what we're looking where there's a deal at. And so Jeff is very knowledgeable and how to on how to fund deals, but also I like it because he's an investor. So what I try to do is put people in there who are not only doing a particular area, but they're also investing. So without further ado, Jeff, this is your floor. You can tell them what you want to tell them, and then go into your presentation. And then, just so you guys know, if you have any questions, you can text them in to 857-302. 857-0367. Sure, I messed up my own thing. 857-302-0367. That's 857-302-0367. And what we'll do is we will get your questions answered. All right, so without further ado, give it up for Jeff Moneyman Nelson.
I I appreciate that. I'm super grateful to be here. My name is Jeff Nelson. I am a senior loan officer with Movement Mortgage. I'm licensed across this great state. I mean, it's a great country. And I'm essentially here to talk to you about a lot about what's going on in the market and finding the most effective way for financing, right? So we're here to talk about investors. So main thing that we're looking at is multifamily has been super popular, and it's kind of a great way to start to build financial wealth. All right, so you have the ability where you can house hack. You have a 3-family or a 2-family. You can offset the mortgage payments to your tenants while you live rent-free or completely or at a subsidized rate while you're still building equity into that home. Well, there's been a lot of recent changes with what's going on in the world, such as interest rates going up through the roof, inflation, and so a lot of uncertainty. Is this the right time to buy? Should I pause? What's going on? So I'm here to tell everyone, like, hey, now more than ever, you want to make sure that you're working with the right professionals. You want to make sure that you're tracking your spending. You're making sure that you're maximizing how much money you can make in your jobs, because the cost has gone higher, right? So for me, about a year ago, we were giving people 2% interest rates, 3% interest rates. We're now mid 5s and pushing the 6s, and it just turned June, right? Experts say that we have two more interest rate hikes before the year is over, so that can push us in the 7s. So that's essentially what that's doing. That's shrinking the wealth gap. What's going on? It's literally taking the middle class people out and literally putting you into 2 sections. Either you're rich or you're poor. So now, for those who are trying to become financially wealthy, trying to become financially stable, or generational wealth is the new buzzwords, you have to be more strategic and more than ever, right? You have to understand the numbers. You have to research the areas you're looking into. Maybe your heart was set on being in the city of Boston or being in the city of Providence. Those are the 2 main areas that I work out of, Rhode Island and Mass. But you have to, long-term goals, what makes sense for me, all right? Because I'm priced out now. If you had a pre-approval 3 months ago that allowed you to be in those areas at a lower 3%, right? If you know there's certain ratios that we have to follow working in the bank, that's called your debt to income ratio, right? It kind of takes your income and divided by the liabilities that you have based off your credit. Where we go into that formula when you sit down with a professional like myself and you understand where is your cap at to where you can purchase. And every time the interest rates go higher, your buying power shrinks. All right, so that's what's happening now, right? Where last year you had a buying power of 750, the interest have doubled that. So what does that tell you? So that 750 shrinks to nearly 400,000, maybe even 350, depending on how you lose that income or what your profile looks like. So I tell people now, okay, I have a client. He lost his pre-approval, but we were able to update his resumes. Well, he updated his own resume, found their job, and we were able to get his pre-approval back, right? His being strategic, not quitting to find the house so he can qualify. I have 2 couples, their original plans were to each get a multifamily when interest rates made sense. Where I'm like, well, together you guys have the income so you can still buy, right? So being strategic, and they had their hearts set to be in Boston before. Now they've outskirts further out to Rhode Island,
right?
Because it's like, okay, our commute will be the same or a little bit longer, but I'm buying a property a fraction of the price, and the rents make sense, and it's a growing market, right? So you're sacrificing what my wants are and what my needs are. What's my long-term goal? What does it matter for me? So you want to really look at that, do I want to be in this property for a long time? Is this going to be an investment? So really, you have to be as strategic. When you're buying a multifamily, I always tell people you're buying into a business, right? You're not looking at a home, all right? So you want your business to make money for you, or take away some costs, right? So the trade-off is you live rent-free, right? So that's an expense that's taken away from you, all right? So now you can allocate those dollars to other things that's going for you, or you can put it back in your savings. When you move out that unit, right, now it's going to even cash flow for you. So if you looking at these multi-families, you look at that, like it allows me a safe space for 2 years, 3 years, whatever your goals are, to save my money, all right, while I'm collecting, or the mortgage is being paid by somebody else, understanding I'm in an area that maybe I ideally didn't want to be to begin with, but allow time to take its course, right? Allow the market to do the correction that's going on, allow the elections, whatever's going, I don't know. We don't have a crystal ball, right? But realistically speaking, we're going to be in this weird limbo for the next 2 years, a foreseeable future, right? What's not going to change is the houses, people are still buying. That's not going to stop, right? Interest rates is not going to stop. Inflation is not going to stop. Prices is not going to stop. So either you can postpone your dreams and it's going to cost you more later, or you can find creative ways and take action now, all right, and still maximize, your investment. So for me, I saw a trigger in an area that I saw was up and coming, all right. I ideally wanted to be in my areas. I got priced out, or I didn't believe I wanted to compete. I'm not putting over $50,000 asking if I don't have to, all right. So I was strategic enough to look in an area. I'm like, well, the price point makes sense. What I can make off this building makes sense. And I know a year from now, when everyone cannot compete in these areas, they don't make enough money, all right, it's going to drive the price over here. Prime example, I bought a house for $475. I have 2 clients who are buying in that same area for same similar property for $525. But my house is much larger than theirs. So my house is going to be appraised for more. So within a year, I have potentially an additional $50,000 to $100,000 worth of equity that I have access to now allow me to do extra renovations, all right? Maybe purchase another house, all right, that now I can spread my wealth, all right? So this is when, during times like this, the ones who really thrive in this are those who are prepared for it, right? Knowing these strategies allows you to prepare for this so you can capitalize, right? History repeats itself, right? We start paying attention, right? The worst recession or the worst inflation hikes happened in the 80s, right? Back then it started at 11%, it rose all the way to 18%. Now we have the luxury of being at 3%. Hopefully it doesn't rise that high. But understanding where we are right now, and we can catch it, or we can be aggressive, or we can execute. The key word is executing, right? Get everything in order. Make sure you understand what you're doing. The blind leading the blind is not gonna work it, right? The people who kind of like, who suddenly know what they're doing. No. You need to know as well too. You need to work with experts, and you need to be prepared, right? Because if you can capitalize now, when it comes back around, there's always going to be an ability to refinance. There's going to be an ability to leverage, your wealth correctly, right? Be in that driver's seat where you can continue to be aggressive. That's kind of like my spiel. That's a question.
But you said a couple of interesting things that we've always talked about in this session. Is that number one, you have to think strategically, and that I think a lot of times, I think the biggest mistake that most people make is that they just see their house as a place to live. Yeah. And I always say, hey man, you got a place to stay, you need one of those. Yeah. But if you could see your whatever the property is, whether it is you buying a single, which is cool too, but if you buy a multi, and you see this as a wealth building tool, it's a totally different mindset. And so when as you using the word strategic and looking at, okay, I'm looking at buying this house and then I'm gonna stay a year or two and then I'm gonna make some moves. I think that's something that a lot of people are not doing.
It's always important to, especially for our people, right? For our generation, for our demographics. This is the strategy that makes the most sense. Before you want to buy assets, you don't want to put more things into liabilities. And if your goal is to truly be a homeowner and have some freedom, we saw what just happened with the pandemic. People lost their jobs. If your landlord's raising the rents, you have no control. You have no ownership. All right. So you have no say so. So if your boss fires you today, you're essentially you might be helpless. Maybe it's a little bit. It changes your lifestyle. Right. Your landlord raises your rent. You have no control over that. But guess what? If you own a home, kind of offset some of those things. Because the one thing you have to, you're secure of, you have a roof over your head. Right. All right. That's ultimate. You got a roof over your head. You still got a shot to go fight, go figure things out. Now, even better with a multifamily, you have a roof over your head that other people are funding for you. Right. So if you were able to save yourself the money, the down payment necessary to buy the first one, when you did have that rent, how easier is it going to be now you no longer have to pay that, right? So now it allows yourself to move in a position of power, all right? And then now you can downsize next, right? You can go from a 3 to a 2, go from a 2 to a 1, or in my scenario, I'm in a 4, so I can buy a 3, 2, 1, all at a lower interest rate, at a lower percentage down as well too, and I'm now going to have the ability to use the equity from one to buy the next one and buy the next one.
Right.
Or even if you don't have to, even I didn't have, let's say my equity did not build as quickly as it did, all right? Because scenarios doesn't happen that quickly, all right? I'm no longer paying my $1,500 a month apartment bill that I was, all right? So if I can put that back in my pocket, right. Well, how much do it's $30,000.
Exactly.
2 years, $60,000. All right, 3 years, that's $90,000 that I don't have to pay someone else. If I'm strategic enough, and my building continues to just have tenants in there, good tenants, it pays itself. I'm smart with I save just that. I have $90,000 available on the opposite side of a potential recession or whatever's going on, but security that I can provide for myself, right, to then leverage to go add more to my portfolio or add to my retirement or just breathe. Growing up, I didn't have that security, all right? So now that I didn't have that knowledge and have that wealth, a lot of people from our neighborhoods, they don't have that, right? We do know now, right? I'm in a position to pass that on. That's what I predominantly kind of teach all my clients, right? Like understanding the numbers, breaking it down, building that lifestyle. So when I want my forever home, it's no longer a bill for me at all right? Because my properties pay for that. My property pays for itself. I get the luxury. I could take that $1,500 and go buy some Jordans, go buy this, go buy a fancy car, go get a new BMW when that payment for the BMW is $1,000. Oh, my building does that. I got the $1,000, or I can just continue to ride my nice Toyota Camry. I only got 150,000 miles on it. I'm gonna beat that to its 250. All right.
Toyota's a good product, man.
Good product. Good product.
I have lots of 200-some-thousand.
Because I see the end goal.
Yeah, exactly.
My end goal. I'm sacrificing some years, right, to set up my life. I'm not sacrificing my life to set up some years. I'm understanding what's going on, and I'm not complaining about what's happening, right? But if you're not in the ability to act swiftly, at least put together a game plan. Right? That's the important, I don't have that money. There's so many resources and so many things out there nowadays. Unemployment rate's the lowest it's ever been, so everyone's hiring, right? I have a client, 2 years, overtime, constantly, $66,000, security guard, $17 an hour. The work can be done, all right? Homeowner. Put my head down, saved, worked overtime. Not saying for you to kill yourself. I'm just saying we have the ability, we have the knowledge, we have the strategies. You go grind. You can go grind and you can earn it. You can become a homeowner. You can put yourself in a position where he doesn't work overtime anymore. He doesn't have to. He's living in an area where it was unaffordable, and rent is rising faster than appreciation in houses. Yeah. Right? That's the key component I even talk about. Right, everywhere rent is up. A minimum of 15%.
In some places, drastically.
Drastically.
Yeah, exactly.
It's become unaffordable everywhere. So, do you want someone else dictating the lifestyle that you have, or do you want to be in control of that? All right. Are you making the necessary lifestyle changes that you really say that you want? All right. Do you believe I believe everyone is birthright to be a homeowner. All right, I believe everyone's birthright to choose the things that they want to do, the lifestyle that they believe that they deserve. You can put the work into it. You put yourself around the right people. You have the right mindset, and then the strategies. and that's it.
No, talk about, because you said something. Talk about, because I'm always interested in, part of the reason why I bought Jeff in today is because not only is he a mortgage lender, but he's also an investor.
Yeah.
And that's a different hat as opposed to a retail person. I'm saying not one's better than the other, but just for this group's sake, most of the people who are here in the audience are investors, or those who are watching are desiring to be investors. So talk about that. What are some things that, so what should we be looking for if we're looking to come to somebody like yourself to talk about investing, and what type of lender should we be looking, and what questions should we be asking?
You should understand, before I answer that question, a key component is going to be tied in with that. But yeah, so when you meet with the lender, we're going to go with your goals, right? Since we're talking to a crowd of investors, I'm going to just stay with the multifamily, right? You want to be understanding, like, maybe if you live in Boston, because we're talking about, if you live in Boston, unless you make over $100,000, all right, it doesn't make sense for you to be looking to invest in Boston, all right, unless you have some connections. So you work with someone who can be more strategic. Even if you can afford Boston, right, you look at it like, okay, my goal is to acquire X, Y, and Z, knowing what your 5-year plans are, knowing things like that. Or how do I start off with the one? What makes sense? The way I told you, I chose to go further out to another area that was still within reason to everywhere I had to be. My commute increased maybe by 15 minutes more, but that was worth it for me for the possibilities. All right, I myself would love to invest in Boston. I understand you can get $2,500, $2,800 for one unit, but if your mortgage is $6,000 and you can only make $500 profit afterwards, what's the point?
Right.
Where I have a building, my mortgage is $2,900, and each floor gives me $1,500. What makes more sense, right? So you look at that like geography, like, all right, I just need to be in this area. So maybe I want to live in Brockton. Well, Taunton makes more sense. I don't want to commute that much. I guess you want to pay more, but you don't afford more. All right. So you talk about things like that, location-wise, what makes sense. Crossing state lines. A lot of states are neighboring states, like Rhode Island and Mass are neighboring states that you can easily get to work. Rhode Island's neighboring states to Connecticut. Seeing, working with someone who's multi-licensed, where you can be strategic based on where you are. In certain locations, I might be closer to Connecticut than I am to somewhere in Mass. Right. Or if I'm somewhere in Rhode Island, you might literally be there. It's that big difference. All right, there's an area in Rhode Island, Seekonk and East Providence. They're neighboring states. They're two different states, but the prices for Seekonk are vastly more than they are for East Providence. In the same line distance. So understanding that, like, oh, maybe I crossed the line, save myself $25,000 on the same type of house, right? It's all within those details. So understanding like where your numbers are, understanding you having your savings, where your credit position is, because all those things factor into what kind of interest rate you can get, right? Making sure having those conversations and being on top of those. Right, because we can go up to 56% on that DTI number that I mentioned to you, and if you're an investor, you definitely want to learn the terminologies, want to learn like or what this means. Like, all right, because it's going to be critical because the rates are volatile. Right. So if I tell you your DTI ratio, we're trying to max you out because you want to be aggressive. Like, hey Jeff, what's my max? I'm gonna say right now your max is 600,000. You should be checking in, or we should be checking in weekly, all right, to make sure you start at 600,000, because I'm maxing out at that 56, all right? At any time, things can change, where rates go a little bit higher. That 600,000 might now be 580. You go put an offer on that, you don't win, all right? Or maybe now that 600,000 is now 650. It doesn't make sense in the numbers. So it's all about understanding the numbers and if it makes sense for you.
Right. And I think having someone who can walk you through that, because a lot of this stuff, to hear you talk is like I'm just trying to think like a new person. They like
yeah.
eyes glazed over and all that stuff. So I think that as the reason why I like you and then the speaker that we had last month is because they're investors as well, and making that transition from hard money, which is more of a and then there are three types of money. There's private money, there's hard money, and then there's somebody you come to see somebody like Jeff, who's more on the traditional side. And so last month we talked about, a hard money loan is really more dependent on the asset as opposed to credit score and things of that nature. When you come see somebody like Jeff, he's looking more at credit score. You make sure that the property is a certain way, unless you do some 2 or 3 Ks. I don't know if you do that type of stuff, but you do that type of stuff. So it's just a different type of lender. So part of why we started this group is, listen, all learning is cumulative. My wife and I have been doing this since 2016, 2017, and so don't be intimidated by some of the things that he's talking to you about. What we're endeavoring to do is just to expose you to that's what we talk about. Let's talk real estate. You got to talk it before you do it, but the more you can get comfortable with listening to someone talk like Jeff, going like the Perkins are doing, they're going looking at properties. You texted me last week. I was like, don't get frustrated. You're just looking, you're learning, because what you can do is you can get in this particular market, you can get very desperate.
Yeah.
And when you're desperate, you make mistakes. And this is not like you can go back and buy a wrong sweater and take it back. You putting up hundreds of thousands of dollars in some case. You in Boston, you talking about millions of dollars. And so what you don't want to do is you don't want to make a mistake, because real estate is not something that's a very liquid thing that you can turn around very quickly. So like I told you guys the first, I said, listen, be patient with yourself. I've looked at, and the fortune here today, and some other folks, Sister Joanne's back here too. Vanessa's been looking at. Look, we've looked at a lot of houses during our day. When our mentor said, look, he said, expect to look at about 25 houses before you get one.
It's a marathon out there.
So it's a marathon, and that was in halfway good times. So don't talk about where we are now. And so the thing is, you can't get desperate and you make a decision that's going to hurt your family long term. So that's why you start up with the presentation, start about being part of your strategy has to include patience.
Patience and being honest with yourself, right? Your wants and needs list have to take a real hard look at it, all right? If you were wanted, granite countertops, beautiful this, brand new this, that might not be realistic right now.
At this point.
Right? Also, if you're not handy whatsoever, be honest with yourself. I'm not the most handiest, so I do need a property a little bit more upkeep.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Understanding that if you want something like that, it might cost more, or it might require you to relocate, or become handy. What are you willing to sacrifice? What makes sense? What is a compromise, or what is a necessary?
Right.
Things that are necessary, structural foundation.
Roof.
Right? Roofs, those things, right?
Chemicals.
Water, heating, plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? The structural stuff, the foundational stuff that allows you to operate your building, your business, right, effectively. All right? You can go and paint. You can go and change the cabinets. You can do all those things yourself or as time goes, right? If all those structural things work, how many units am I getting? What is this area telling me? A big thing because you did the hard money lender, we're going for traditional financing, the cheapest, right? And every investor starts off with an FHA, 3.5% down. Right, maybe someone gets a 5%, but it makes no sense for you if you want to start the cheapest. Go with the FHA, 3.5% down.
Right.
So now that FHA has a rule that for a lot of months, essentially the last 2 years, hasn't really bothered too many people because of the lower interest rate. Now it's parking up. It's called FHA self-sufficiency test. So essentially what that means is, all right, the bank is going to total up how much that building makes in totality for rents. So if you're in a building and you have 3 bedrooms each floor, and each floor makes $1,500, that total building's $4,500. Well, they're going to factor in a 25% vacancy factor in there, all right, to make sure that building can operate by itself in case there's a vacancy. What people are knowing those numbers is back to being important. What's happening with the higher interest rates, people last year, the lower interest rates was passed down with flying colors, right? Because that number leaves you at $33.75. Around a $500,000 mortgage, you may not qualify if the rents are not there, all right? Even though you're like, oh, this makes sense for me number-wise, like, so you got to really know, like, all right, this is a maximum investment for me, or working with the people who are around you who understand that in real time. Like, hey, am I investing in the right area? Because you might think, oh, I got a 3-family. Oh, it's going to make a lot of money. But it's like 2 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, and you're only getting $1,200 for those 2 bedrooms, and you really need to be at $1,400, right? Maybe eventually you'll get there, but are you in an area that people... Are you in the Pittsfield area we were talking about? Or, and not no disrespect to Pittsfield guests, or are you more of a metropolitan area? Are you close? Like I said, I can never demand, well, hopefully one day, but right now I can't demand the same rents that Boston can.
Yeah,
right. I can demand the same rents as Providence can. Right? Providence themselves, another big city, can't demand the same rents that Boston can. So understanding, like, where am I? Does this make sense? Am I just jumping because Jeff said interest rates are going to be higher, so I got to pick anything?
Desperate,
we don't want to make desperate, because right then and there, once you sign those paperwork, if you get approved for that, that's your responsibility. It's you borrowing over $500,000 or $250,000 or $1 million, depending on where you are. That you're responsible for. All right, so you got to be strategic. You gotta understand that.
Don't scare him, Jeff.
I'm not scaring. That's why you come see me. I figured it all out for you guys.
Don't scare him,
we work hard.
What are you doing?
No.
That's why we're doing this.
That's why we're doing this. So you understand, like, you're not by yourself.
Right.
There's a science to it, right?
Is.
But it's not complicated, and we all can do it.
And the problem I find is that, because money is pretty much white and black, but people's emotions get in this. Can y'all feel me? Yeah. We ain't in church, y'all can say amen. Just say amen. People get emotional, and so your emotions get involved. And so that's why you need someone like yourself. And we've talked about, just in general, that investing is a team sport, just in general. So we talk about Jeff is with the mortgage side, but you need a good realtor who's walking, who can talk you down off the ledge too, at different times, and really have a sense of what you need. And so of those 2 people are working together as part of your team, your inspector, home inspector is part of that. Everybody has to work together. But the most difficult part I found is when you're talking to people, they get emotional. And I've got to have this, or I've got my kids going to school or whatever, and it's like, listen, you're about to make a mistake, and what you've got to understand is you got to stick to your guns and believe this. And I don't want to get in pastory, but this is a Christian network, so I can do that. God has a house for you.
Amen.
And matter of fact, more than one house for you. Yeah. Just don't get desperate, you know. Yeah. And so that's where I've seen people make the mistakes at, is that they start to press, and then they start, well, I can, and to Jeff's point, you know, there are some things that you need and some things that you want. You know, you can keep an ugly brown color in your house for a year or 2. That's a mistake we made when we first bought our first 3-family. We hate this. And went and got more money on and a whole bunch of siding, which we didn't have to do. We could have stuck with the ugly brown for a little bit longer. And so, but if you're going back to your original statement, if you think strategically, and then another word I could use, intentionally, you recognize, okay, and one of the best advice I heard years ago, a guy said to me, and you know, sometime when you're young, I was in my 20s when we actually with 30s when we bought that house. I know I look like I'm like 31, but I'm like probably 54 in a couple of weeks.
Don't crack.
Good black don't crack. Anyway, he said, don't try to do everything at one time.
To piggyback off that, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like a lot of times we overestimate what we can do in a year, but underestimate what we can do in 5, 10, 20 years. Back to that same mentality, like, listen, we can't have it all in one day. It just doesn't. A plant doesn't work that way. A child, us, we don't grow up that way. Nothing is really that's worthwhile happens rapidly.
Right.
All right. You plant your seed. You be strategic. You learn how to do that, and you just harvest later, and you grow with your skill set. You grow by doing.
And what you just said is key too, because we said we named it Let's Talk Real Estate, but listen, until you really get out there and start doing it, what Jeff is talking about two-use theory, until you actually look at a house, get to a closing table, spend some money, and you sign the paperwork, you almost shaking. The first time you buy the house, you like this. Everybody here, they shaking their head. Y'all can't see me. They like, you was shaking the first time I bought it. But the last 2 or 3, 4 times we did it, it was just like, okay, this is what you need to do. But and part of what we want to do is have this be a mentorship. So, many of you have texted me and sent me emails. We'll answer questions because we want to help you to get through that process where you get from just talking real estate until you actually getting the keys on something, and then thinking, okay, what's our next move? Because listen, once you buy one house, you can buy 2 houses.
Yeah.
And you can buy 3 houses. But I just believe getting your first property, so whether you buy it and you just live in it or have a multifamily, which I believe is the house you said, house hacking is the best move.
Yeah.
But just getting your first one and getting it underneath getting that process underneath your belt helps you.
The first one's the hardest one, right? Because now you have all the knowledge of what it took you to get there.
Right.
All right. So now it's just adding a little bit more things to your tool belts.
Right.
That's as you grow with this journey, as you grow as an investor, as you grow as a person. We just take the things we learned from the past and we just add on to it to better ourselves.
Right.
If we're doing it correctly, right? Provide ourselves with the support and the guidance, and essentially it's how majority of millionaires build their wealth is through real estate. Right.
They either build it or keep it.
Keep it, yeah.
Build it or keep it. I heard that years ago.
Stock market is going down.
Right.
Everything is only thing that's consistent right now. I said it earlier in the presentation or in the conversation, right? One thing that remains secure is real estate.
Right. People always gonna need a place to stay.
Always need a place to stay. All right.
Now, to talk about what's going on in Rhode Island, because Jeff he's been talking around where he invested at, but maybe he'll tell us.
You see, we're in Rhode Island. We're seeing a lot of mass hybrids or mass implants because it's the same concept I'm telling you. It's just like, wait a minute, all right. I'm here in Rhode Island, have good food. I'm here in Rhode Island.
It's right up 95.
Right up 95.
Yeah.
I can get to Boston in 45 minutes. I get to really beautiful, even further by the water in Newport, another 20 minutes in that province. I'm still, and all over Rhode Island, you're still touching Mass. Right. So, I work in Mass. All right, cool. Listen, we're at that age where it's like, what's best for me and my family? All right.
True.
What's best for me and my lineage? What's best for me? Right. And long was my goal. So what I'm seeing is a lot of people like Rhode Island has jumped up tremendously in pricing and population and everything and interest, because people are using that same mindset like, why am I going to pay $1 million for one house where I can go spend $1 million and get two and a half houses,
exactly.
All right, and make more money? So investors are going over there. Same concept for people is like in Providence, right? There's already a train that goes directly to the major city, right? So it's like, all right, I can commute, or a lot of us are working from home. That's what really occurred.
That's a game changer,
right? That was the real game changer. That's why like so many people migrated to Florida. Now Florida is the most expensive state to actually live in, right? Everything, the moment it goes listed, is like 50 people. Rhode Island's still getting about 25. I have realtors that I work with, right? You're like, it's Hunger Games, essentially, right? So you're really competing for that, and now it's okay. We understand. Like they're looking at the numbers. We're looking at the numbers. Every investor kind of has like their own little criteria. If I invest this, can I make this back in 10 years? Or I'm going with the cash flow. Whatever your points, whatever makes sense for you, you got to know those things, right? The education, the things that you're listening to, all of that, you put the work in, and you'll see the results. But that's what I'm seeing, right? So
Name a couple areas where you're seeing people investing in.
Providence itself.
Okay.
All right, Pawtucket, because
Yeah.
Pawtucket is probably one of the best cities I like
Right.
because it's very similar to Providence. All right, a little bit cheaper, but it's also getting the commuter rail.
Right.
All right, which also allows Pawtucket residents to have full access to Boston.
Right.
All right, there's a couple of old mills.
Off of 95, as I'm going down, I see the mills off to the drive.
So they're making like luxury apartments there.
Right.
I have a couple of realtor buddies that could speak more on this.
Okay.
But they're not unavailable right now.
Like but, wink, wink,
right?
wink.
But in the deals that I've seen those things. It's predominantly a lot of multifamilies in that area.
Right.
That's in a great price point, with growing rents.
Right.
All right. It makes sense.
Right.
All right, and then if the supply and demand issue continues to be what it is, all right, there's a shortage of houses and not a shortage of buyers.
Right.
All right, so the values continue to grow. Once that commuter rail goes here, it's going to pique interest of higher income, higher different demographics that want to invest in there.
Right.
It's like, oh, I can get a condo for only $225. All right, it makes sense for me.
Right.
Or I get a multifamily for $400,000. It makes sense for me.
Right.
Exactly what happens, gentrification all over again, everywhere.
Right.
That's what's happening.
What about Woonsocket? What's going on there?
I think it's not too far off.
Right.
All right, but it's probably your best bang for your buck in the Rhode Island area because it's literally a full nothing but multifamilies, and the surrounding towns around it are gorgeous. Right. Massachusetts, it's a lot of Massachusetts. Right, but even at the town right next over Blackstone, mirrors similar to Woonsocket and similar in prices.
Okay.
And you can still get to Boston in like 45 minutes.
Exactly.
Right? Like, oh, traffic 1:30. Well, it's an hour 30 traffic for Boston anywhere in rush hour. Right? It's just right. It's just what it is. That's what happens. That's exactly what. When the city becomes too overpopulated, overcrowded, or too expensive, right? Everyone disperses.
People spread out.
Right? So, but for you, you're dispersing not because you have to. You're dispersing because you're choosing to. Because strategically, you see it.
Yeah,
you're thinking.
Something,
right? These people are gonna need someplace to live. Right? I need to save my money because it'll make me sense me paying $2,500 for a 2-bedroom to live in Dorchester or something like that. If I can afford it, if not. Some people are, hey, I can afford it, I want to be here, this makes sense for me. That's fine.
So be it, right?
So be it. But we're here talking to investors, right? So I'm not trying to offend no one and stuff like that. We all have been renters, right? I had a landlord until about 3 years ago. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? So we're all there. So it was like, all right, I'm here. This is making sense.
Right.
Buying
So
up.
you're saying Pawtucket,
Providence,
Woonsocket, and what's the other town we mentioned?
East Providence, Cranston. All right, those.
Because when I think investors, I think two types of things.
Yeah.
In Rhode Island, I think multis, but also vacation properties.
If you're going to closer to Newport, or you're closer to by the water, some Airbnbs. So
where people buying? Because this is for me, y'all. I'm selfishly asking. I've just got y'all on camera checking our conversation. My wife and I looking for a place. Where do you buy by the water? That's what I want to know.
Bristol, Tiverton, Middletown. Those are all surrounding towns around Newport, where so you still get that crowd.
Okay.
You get to Newport to Bristol in like 10 minutes. It's a great shot, and you get
Tiverton. We've been to a few times.
Yep.
And they're very nice town.
Yep.
And then Bristol, I don't think we've been to Bristol.
It's literally the opposite side, right? Nice little town. You'll see a lot of veterans in that area.
Okay.
Same thing in Newport. You have Middletown, Portsmouth.
And the reason why I brought that up is because we, as an investor, you're thinking you said the M is many
East Providence,
many exit strategies. So one of the strategies that I'm finding that people are turning to is not the monthly rent, but if you get an Airbnb and stuff that you can turn over on a weekly basis during certain times. I was talking to a realtor some time ago. They were talking about around where's URI at?
URI is in was it Kingston?
South Kingston.
South Kingston, yeah.
He was seeing a lot of area activity there in that URI area.
Yeah, I guess because close to the beach area.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
he was seeing a lot of that.
So, in the Bristol area, they have a couple of schools as well too. So you have student rentals.
Exactly.
Right. You have veterans. Veteran departments actually has their own version of Section 8, where if you don't want to do Section 8, you can
rent to veterans.
I actually think that's a great strategy.
Great strategy.
Because you have limited people in the same amount of unit. All right. Less wear and tear on your kitchen. Less wear and tear on your bathroom. Less wear and tear on everything. All right.
And guaranteed money. Too.
Guaranteed money. All right. That's kind of a win-win. And if they decide to become a homeowner soon, you can rotate those out and stuff like that. And you're actually helping, because the veteran homelessness is actually the highest in the country, like over 30%.
Got it.
Right? Our heroes come back and they're not treated as such. So, yeah, less dogs have to worry about, kids running around. I got kids in my building. All right, I love kids. All right, but as an investor,
it's
right,
just wear and tear in your
it's just wear and tear in your building. All right,
building.
I'm wearing two caps. I'm wearing a business owner. I'm like, all right, I get the same amount of rents, if not more, guaranteed, less headaches. It's a no-brainer. And I'm providing a service to my country and stuff like that, and helping my people out.
Yeah.
Because people are like, oh, I want to chase down tenants, or I don't want Section 8. Like, we can always say what we don't want. Find what works for you. All right. There's multiple strategies. I know plenty of investors. They rent to college students.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I would never deal with college students. But well, guess what? They charge about $700 to $800 per bedroom.
Yeah.
Right. If you're in an area,
my daughter's getting one, and we just signed a lease for her a couple weeks ago. $750 in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
In the Newport area we're talking about, right? In the summer times, I have friends who have investors in that area. A 4-bedroom, just for the summers, $4,500. My whole building gives me $4,500, for example, right? My whole building gives me $4,500. He's charging $4,500 per floor because he had the right sound of mind to invest in that area before it blew up. Now it's so popular that he can demand.
Right, you said right. Demand
$4,500 per floor. All right.
Demanded.
And probably owns it free and clear now, or little to nothing.
Right.
And that's what you're doing, right? You're parking your investment. That's why I say you want to start off with a 3 or 4 family at 3.5% down, because after that it doesn't get any cheaper.
Right.
All right. Because now you're going to talk about 10% down, 25% down. You need to have extra money on the side for reserves. Mm-hmm. It gets a little bit more complicated as you grow. But if you're strategically talking for my new investors, you start higher, because if you get the 4 family or a 3 family and you invest down, you can still be in that 3.5% down until you run out.
Now questions, because I want to take a few questions. Anybody text us in, baby? Okay. Y'all got questions? Text 857-302-0367. All right. The question I had was, first-time home buyers, can you do that more than once?
Yes, you can. You can hold the FHA is not just for first-time home buyers. It's a owner-occupied loan. All right. So the strategy with that is, if you use your FHA for your 3.5% down, refinance out of that, you get that in conventional. You get to receive your FHA owner-occupied unit. The caveat, you have to live in there for 1 year. Depending on how your savings and what your goals are, right? From my example, easy example, a lot of my clients, right, we usually like a 2-year plan, or I ask you, how long did it take you to save your original down payment? Oh, it took me 5 years, it took me 3 years before I knew this, or whatever it is. All right, well, that same time frame, let's stay in here, or maybe it's even less time frame. Who knows? Whatever you feel comfortable, whenever you're ready. It's essentially the real time, but by the rules, you need to live in that house for 1 year. After that, you can refinance out of it and use it again. So, buy your FHA this year, use your FHA the next year, your FHA the next year, your FHA the next year, FHA the next year. Essentially, you're kind of out, because now you're down to 1 unit. You downsize, but now, guess what? That's 3. It's 2, or it's 4, 3, 2, 1. 15 units, 5 to 8 years. All right. all of them paying the mortgage or generating cash flow for you while you're living in your beautiful house, all right, with your beautiful spouse and your children.
Jeff painting the picture for y'all.
I'm painting a picture for y'all, all right? Can you see it? Can you see it?
But you know, that's what, you know, part of what we wanted to do is give you that type of knowledge. Because I think either you told me somewhere else that you can do it, because I just thought the first time home buyer you can only do it once. And then when I heard, I was like, oh, you can do it more than one time?
Yes.
You know, and so that's part of your strategy of you being intentional of, like you said, buying a 4 or 3 and 2 1, and then being able to just every year. Now you may not want to move every year. If you got a spouse, that she may not go for that, or he may not go for that. But just the concept of being able to do that empowers you.
The concept, understanding, it doesn't work for everybody. Right? These are tools. Right? Maybe hard money, maybe you're further along, maybe that's not in your plan, but at least you know. Right? The more knowledge you know, that was what was hindering us, right? We didn't know, we didn't have any action plans. Now we do. Right? Now it allows us to move in a position of power. I've said that phrase again, but continue to say that. You want to be moving in a position of power, all right? Want to be strategic. You're playing chess out here, all right? So you have to know this move right here, I'm setting it up for 3 moves later, all right? And stick with those. You make an agreement with yourself. This is what's going to be feed my family for generations to come.
Right.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Any questions coming? Okay, any questions? Anybody in the audience?
So what products do you have? Oh, sorry. Hi. Hello? Okay. So, obviously FHA, you said owner occupied. What products do you have for somebody that just wants to buy multifamily, but wants to go the traditional route? Like, what are interest rates looking for that? What are the characteristics of that type of vehicle?
So FHA is a traditional product, right? It's one of the most common products. So the 3 most common products is FHA, conventional, and VA if you're a veterans. So you really would go back to FHA or conventional to see what makes sense for you. The FHA is the cheapest way, all right?
If you're living there, though. But if you're not living there,
it's going
to have to be the conventional then.
It's going to be 25% down.
25%.
Yeah, so it's a
secret.
that's
Can't get around that.
Can't go around that. All right, there's different investor loans as well too, but you're looking at a substantially much higher interest rate and down payment. Because even with a larger down payment with those investor loans, the investors behind them that backs them, they look at it as such, more volatile. Where you're owner occupied, they give you benefits for that.
Does the FHA consider like secondary homes as owner occupied as well?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Owner occupied. Your primary residence.
Okay.
Yep. For the first year.
You mentioned Providence,
Yeah.
and I was looking at Providence a while back, and I was just wondering if you could sort of break it down by neighborhood. Would you suggest any particular part of Providence over another?
I would refer you to a realtor partner of mine who are really more boots to the ground in that area. Essentially, a lot of investors essentially will look at first the opportunity zones. So essentially, every city, right, they have a section that they're heavily involved in reinvesting in. Right, they give you extra tax breaks. They're trying to develop in those areas. Usually, those areas are usually lower demographics. Have maybe a higher crime rate, whatever are more distressed.
It's on the come up.
It's on the come up,
basically.
On the
On the
corner line of gentrification.
Yeah,
right. That's exactly what those opportunity zones, aka like we're trying to gentrify this area, or you can look at more of a established area. But that's where, after we know the numbers and understand, and I know I can pinpoint you like, hey, here's some of the target areas. You go from there because there's target. Providence is not like, oh, this side of Providence, multifamily is the same price as this side of Providence, right? It's the Lower East Side where is really, a lot of our Brown universities around that area, all right? So that's a higher, value area where those multifamilies go to about $1 million, all right? Versus if you're back in the south side of Providence, get a multifamily for like $450, $500. So it varies based on your price line, what makes sense. Like I said, that's when you would kind of like connect with realtor partner of mine. I have one in the room, so essentially you can ask them questions a little bit afterwards.
Thank you, guys.
Can you speak more to like the opportunity zone?
So I don't really have the list of them, but you can definitely go online. So, but essentially, opportunity zones were created to drive people to those areas, right? So, understanding like, so there's certain, in Mass, they're called a lot of the gateway cities. Those are kind of like really diverse communities or really diverse cities where essentially they're trying to develop those areas, right? They're trying to get them, higher values, higher rents, higher everything, better school systems. So each state is different. But quick Google search, you can go find, you can type in the zip code and it'll let you know. Like you literally can put opportunity zone, Massachusetts opportunity zone, Rhode Island. It will bring you to those pages and click like, all right, yeah, this city right here, we're investing in. Usually with those opportunity zones are also those same cities where they'll give you down payment assistance programs too. So.
And then my other question, I know you spoke to this before, with the first-time home buyers, you can be a first-time home buyer for a year and then go back again.
So the FHA, so a lot of people believe that FHA is only for first-time home buyers. In reality, it's not, right? So you can be, for example, when you're a homeowner, you have the ability to refinance, right? To use the existing equity of your house to essentially pull it out to go purchase or use it to pay off some credit card debts or some other high interest debt. But that's, if you have a conventional loan instead, you can essentially refinance out that conventional loan into FHA if it's your primary residence. FHA stands for primary residence. So that's where that ability, that's why I kept saying, oh yeah, you have a FHA 3-family, you can refinance out of that and then use it again to go buy the next one.
And I think that's why having someone who understands that is critical. You know what I mean? If you know the strategy. So.
Yeah.
You guys have a question over here? No? Okay. Anything come on the phone? No. All right. I guess that concludes our presentation. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Well, I'll ask a question actually, just because we've talked about all the good stuff, right? I just remember when we were looking for our house, our first house, a realtor was telling us, oh, you can afford this house, you can definitely do it. And I was just like, I'd like to go on vacation. I'd like to go, I'd like to eat, and I'd like to have my kids go to school. Yeah. So if you could give us some tips of what not, to some red flags maybe for people who are out there, because it's definitely people are, part of the nervousness around getting a house is not being taken advantage of, right? So could you go through some of the things that people should, like some red flags with lenders that they would need to know about?
Red flags for lenders, realtors, anyone who's trying to coerce you to do something that you don't feel comfortable, right? Essentially, we work for you. We don't, until you guys get a home, we don't get paid. So understand
Gotta get to the closing table.
Right, we gotta get to the closing table. So some people who essentially are more, trying to be advantageous to get a commission might sway you in a position that you're not comfortable with. Don't be swayed. Back to what we were saying, find patience and understand, right? You don't want to be house rich, all right, and cash poor, right? You want to make sure that, what you're eligible for and what you can afford is two different things. True. Right? Because like I said, that pre-approval, I can tell you $600,000, all right, you're good to go. On $600,000, here's the mortgage that you're responsible for, right? Remember, this is why the banks does all of this, right? We're looking at, I'm giving you a loan for $600,000. This is what the payments are. I want this is the vacancy issue. I need to make sure you can cover that. You want to look at the same concept too. You want to look at what your monthly expenses are, right? In case you have to float that payment, God forbid something runs over, like you're running a business. Why I said don't to scare you, but that's why you have the reserves, right? You want to you want to be strategic, want to make the right decisions, but you wanted to, first thing, jot down all your current bills, right? Create a monthly budget, whether you're really computer savvy, you want an Excel spreadsheet, or like Notepad. I do both, all right? I know what I make after taxes, and I know who I owe, right? That's what the bank's looking at. All right, who I owe the credit card bills, student loans, if I have a car loan, I have my mortgage, those things are first. Unfortunately, gas is now a tremendous bill, but gas goes on my list because I got to get from A point B to, I got to eat. So my groceries, I have my cell phones, I have my subscriptions, I have my gym membership, all that I get haircuts regularly. I got to look good. I'm going to meet you guys here, right? So all of that gets accounted for. So I know exactly how much money I should have in my account. Then I'm looking at my account. Does that make sense? Right? I've been getting this paid the same amount for the last 3, 4, 6, 2, 3 years, right? Have I been saving that? That's the first honest questions you have for yourself, all right? So now you allocate some of that to your savings for rainy days, but you throw that mortgage payment in there and like, oh, because the bank's only looking at certain criteria when we look at your debt to income ratio. We're looking at if you have, a car loan, student loans, credit cards, installments, things of that nature. If you have a current mortgage, those things. I'm not looking at your car insurance. I'm not looking at your groceries. I'm not looking at the miscellaneous stuff that you need. If you have to go daycare is expensive, right? That's a cost for you if you have children. As a bank, I don't care. But you should care because that's in your bills, right? So you make sure it's affordable for you at all times. Okay. Don't be nervous. You got this.
Got it. Give it up for Jeff. All right. Well, this concludes our show. A couple things are wrapping up. Our next meeting will be, I don't know, I don't have the date on me, whatever. The fourth Tuesday in June, whatever date that is. We'll be meeting, and Starling Ells will be our guest. Should be talking about entity setup. And so part of this being in business, you want to know what's the best entity to set up for you. And then also, if you, in the meantime, if you have any questions, we set up an email address for that. So that, I don't know if it's up there, but I'll just give it to you. It's Let's Talk Real Estate Access. Is it up there? Yes. All right, there it is. So you see it on the screen. There's a little, Let's Talk
RE12.
Yep. Let's Talk RE12@gmail.com. So send in any email questions you may have there. Let's Talk RE12@gmail.com. And so we'll be able to answer your questions there. And so until next time, we will see you the fourth Tuesday of June. And be blessed. Good night. Bye-bye. Good job, man.
Try.